Podcast Talk.
Learn English naturally.
Why simple English sounds more confident. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Podcast Talks. My name is Emily, and this is our channel, OffScript English. We're really happy you're here with us today. Just relax, listen, and enjoy a real English conversation.
Hey everyone, I'm Daniel, and today's conversation is about confidence. Not the loud kind, not the perfect grammar kind, but the quiet confidence you hear in real English.
A lot of people think confidence comes from difficult words, long sentences, advanced grammar. But in real conversations, it usually works the other way around.
When English becomes too complicated, people often start to hesitate. They pause too long. They correct themselves. And that hesitation is what others hear.
Simple English feels different. It moves forward. It doesn't stop to impress. It focuses on meaning, not performance. And that's why it sounds confident.
Confidence is not about sounding smart. It's about sounding comfortable. When you feel comfortable speaking, the listener feels comfortable too.
Native speakers understand this instinctively. They don't build perfect sentences in their head. They share ideas, one thought at a time.
And those short thoughts create rhythm. They create flow. And flow is one of the strongest signs of confidence in any language.
This is good news for learners because simple English is available to you right now. You don't need to wait. You can sound confident today.
You don't lose anything when you simplify. You gain clarity, you gain flow, and most importantly, you gain confidence.
I remember when I was learning another language, I always tried to sound impressive. I thought longer sentences meant I was doing better. But the more I tried, the more nervous I became. And people could feel that.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I used to prepare sentences in my head before speaking, and if I forgot one word, everything collapsed. That pressure made me sound unsure even when my English was technically correct.
And that's the moment many learners recognize. You know the grammar, you know the words, but your voice sounds tense, and that tension is what breaks confidence.
I remember a conversation at work. I tried to explain something in a very complicated way. Halfway through, I stopped and just said, "Let me say this more simply." And suddenly, everyone understood me.
That moment is so powerful because it shows that clarity is stronger than complexity. People don't need perfect English. They need clear ideas. And simple language delivers that.
One small habit that helped me a lot was giving myself permission to stop, to pause, to choose a simpler sentence. That permission removed so much pressure.
And pauses are not a problem. They're human. Native speakers pause all the time. They think, they breathe, they adjust, and that actually sounds confident.
Confidence grows when you stop performing, when you stop trying to sound advanced and start trying to be understood. That shift changes everything.
So if you're listening and thinking, I sound too simple, remember this. Simple English often sounds the most confident in real life.
And confidence is not something you suddenly get. It builds slowly, conversation by conversation, and choosing simplicity is one of the best places to start.
Something I really want learners to understand is this. Confidence is something people feel from your energy, not your grammar. If you sound relaxed, people relax with you. Even simple sentences can sound strong when they're said calmly and without fear. That's something I learned the hard way.
I remember a moment when I stopped trying to sound advanced. I was tired and I just spoke simply. And people reacted better than ever. That's when I realized confidence doesn't come from complexity. It comes from honesty.
And this honesty often sounds very simple. Short sentences, clear words, natural pauses, nothing fancy. but people trust that kind of English much more.
Many learners worry that simple English sounds childish, but in real life it sounds professional. Clear communication is respected. People don't think about your level. They think about whether they understand you.
When I listen to confident speakers, they rarely sound complicated. They sound clear. They sound present. And they don't rush to prove anything. That calmness is what people feel.
If you want one simple tip, slow down. Speak a little less. Give yourself time to breathe. Confidence often appears when you stop rushing.
I think many learners are afraid that simple English sounds childish. And I really understand that fear. But in real conversations, simplicity actually sounds mature. It shows that you know what you want to say, and you don't need extra words to hide behind. That confidence is very noticeable.
Yeah, and I've noticed that confident people don't rush. They're not trying to fill every silence they speak, then they pause. And those pauses feel natural, not awkward. That calm rhythm makes people trust you more.
I used to think pauses were a problem, like I was failing if I stopped. But later I realized pauses give your words weight. They give the listener time to process, and that space actually makes you sound more confident.
Simple English also removes pressure. You don't have to perform, you don't have to impress, you just communicate. And when communication feels easy, confidence appears naturally.
And this is why we always say that confidence is not a goal, it's a result. It comes when you feel safe with the language, when English stops feeling like a test and starts feeling like a tool.
So if you're listening and thinking, I need more confidence, try something simple. Use easier words, say less, and notice how much lighter English feels.
Another thing I noticed over time is that confident speakers don't rush to finish. They're okay leaving a thought slightly open. They let the listener meet them halfway. That balance makes conversations feel natural, not forced.
I once had a manager who spoke very simply. No big words, no long explanations. But when he spoke, everyone listened, because his words were clear and his tone was calm. That calmness felt confident.
That's such a good example. It shows that confidence isn't about showing knowledge, it's about making others feel comfortable. When people feel comfortable, they trust you, and trust changes the whole conversation.
This is especially important in a second language, because learners often think they need to prove themselves. But real confidence appears when you stop proving and start connecting.
And connection doesn't need perfect English. It needs presence, listening, responding honestly. Simple language helps you stay present instead of stuck in your head.
I think that's when English really starts to feel like yours. Not something you borrowed, not something you perform, but something you use naturally in your own way. That feeling builds confidence very fast.
So, if English still feels heavy for you, try making it lighter. Shorter sentences, clearer ideas, more pauses. You might be surprised how confident that sounds.
Confidence doesn't come from adding more. It often comes from removing pressure. And simple English is one of the easiest ways to give yourself that space.
Let me give a real example from my life. I used to say things like, I would like to inform you that I am available, and it sounded, weirdly formal. One day, a friend laughed and said, Emily, just say, yeah, I'm free. And honestly, that simple sentence sounded 10 times more confident.
I love that because it shows something important. Complex English can make you sound like you're hiding, like you're building a wall of words. But simple English feels direct and honest. And honesty is a huge part of confidence, especially in everyday conversations.
And here's the part learners don't expect. Simple English gives you control. You can choose your words quickly. You can finish your thought without stress. And when you finish your thought smoothly, the listener feels, okay, this person knows what they mean. That's confidence.
I had a similar moment on a call once. I tried to sound professional and used a long sentence with fancy words. Halfway through, I got lost and my voice went quiet. Then I restarted and said, "Here's the simple version." Everyone relaxed immediately and the conversation became easy.
That simple version line is such a good tool, by the way. You can use it anytime you feel stuck. You can say, let me say it simply, or in simple words. And that instantly makes you sound calm and in control, even if you're nervous inside. What really changed things for me was noticing how little native speakers explain themselves. They don't justify every feeling. They don't give full stories unless someone really asks. Most of the time, they keep it light and balanced. And that balance is what makes the answer feel natural and confident.
Yes, and that's especially clear with everyday questions. When someone asks something simple, they usually expect something simple back. Not because they don't care, but because the question itself is part of a social rhythm. You answer, they answer, and the conversation moves forward.
And many learners don't realize that this rhythm matters more than details. If you give too much information, the rhythm breaks. The moment feels heavier. Simple answers help keep the interaction easy and comfortable for everyone.
I think that's why confident English often sounds very calm. There's no rush to prove anything, no pressure to be impressive, just a clear response that fits the moment. And people instantly feel that ease.
Exactly. Confidence comes from matching the situation. A short answer for a short moment. A longer answer when there's space for it. That awareness makes English feel more human and less stressful.
And this is something you can practice consciously. When someone asks a simple question, try answering with one clear idea. Then stop. You don't need to add more unless the conversation invites it.
This approach also removes a lot of anxiety. You're no longer searching for the perfect sentence. You're just responding naturally. And that shift alone can make your English sound much more confident.
Over time, this becomes automatic. You start feeling when to keep it short, when to open up a little more, and when to let the conversation end. That instinct is what fluent, confident speakers rely on.
So, if your English sometimes feels heavy, try making your answers lighter, not simpler in meaning, but simpler in form. You might be surprised how much easier conversations become.
Because at the end of the day, confidence isn't about saying more. It's about saying enough, enough to be understood, enough to stay connected, and enough to feel comfortable in your own voice.
I think one of the biggest misunderstandings learners have is that confidence comes from adding more words. But in reality, confidence often comes from knowing when to stop. When you finish your thought clearly and don't rush to add explanations, your voice sounds calmer. And calm is something people immediately associate with confidence.
Yes, and I've noticed that confident speakers trust silence. They're not afraid of a short pause after they speak. That pause tells the listener, I've said what I needed to say. And that feeling of completion makes the conversation feel balanced, not awkward.
Exactly. Many learners keep talking because they feel insecure. They think silence means failure, but silence can actually mean clarity. It gives your words space, and when your words have space, they sound more intentional and more confident.
I think this is especially true in casual conversations. When someone asks a simple question, they're not testing your English. They're just checking in. A clear, simple response followed by a pause often feels much more natural than a long explanation.
And once learners understand this, English starts to feel lighter. You stop carrying the pressure to perform. You stop translating every sentence in your head. You just respond, pause, and move on. And that rhythm is very close to how confident English really sounds.
Another thing that helps confidence is accepting that not every answer needs a conclusion. In real conversations, people often respond and then let the moment breathe. They don't wrap everything up neatly. They allow the other person to react, ask more, or change the topic. That openness is a big part of sounding relaxed and confident.
Yes, and that's something textbooks rarely show. They teach full answers, complete explanations, but real life is messier. Sometimes your answer is just enough for that moment, and trusting that enough is a huge step toward confident English.
I think confidence grows when you stop measuring your English all the time. When you stop asking yourself, was that correct? And start asking, did that work? If the message landed and the conversation moved on, that's already success.
That shift takes practice. At first, it feels uncomfortable to say less, but slowly, you notice that people respond more easily. They don't look confused, they don't wait for more explanations, and that feedback helps you trust your English more.
And once that trust appears, English stops feeling like something you have to control. It becomes something you use. You answer, you pause, you listen. And that natural exchange is what confident speakers rely on every day.
I also noticed that confident speakers don't rush to correct themselves. If they choose a word that isn't perfect, they keep going. They trust that the listener understands the intention. That trust keeps the conversation flowing, and flow is something people immediately associate with confidence.
Yes, and overcorrecting can actually break that flow. When you stop to fix every small detail, the focus shifts from meaning to mistakes. Confident speakers allow small imperfections because they care more about connection than accuracy in the moment.
This doesn't mean mistakes don't matter at all. It just means they don't matter during the conversation. You can reflect later, you can learn later. But in the moment, staying present helps your English sound calmer and more confident.
I think this is when English starts to feel less like a performance. You're no longer monitoring yourself constantly. You're listening, responding, adjusting. That flexibility is something listeners feel, even if they can't explain why your English sounds confident.
And when you reach that point, speaking English stops being stressful. It becomes part of your everyday life. You answer questions, you share thoughts, you pause when you need to. And that ease is one of the clearest signs of confidence.
So, if you're listening to this and wondering what to practice next, try paying attention to how conversations actually end. Notice when people stop talking. Notice how often they leave space instead of filling it. That awareness alone can change how confident your English sounds.
And remember, confidence doesn't arrive all at once. It grows quietly, through listening, through small conversations, through choosing clarity over complexity. Every simple, natural response helps you trust your English a little more.
If this conversation feels familiar or helpful, that's a good sign. It means you're already tuning into real English, the kind people actually use. And the more you listen to conversations like this, the more natural your own responses will become.
Thank you for spending this time with us. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us what topic you'd like to hear next. We love reading your ideas, and we're really glad you're here learning English with us.